Welcome to Now Serving, a Side of Therapy, your intro guide into the therapeutic world. Together, we'll explore various aspects around how to show up for ourselves and others by tending to our own mental and emotional well-being. I'm your host, Dalton Huckabee, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm grateful you've joined me.
One of the things that we'll get into later on with our coping tools is behavior changes that we can implement, right? And I mean this like very casually, but if there's a system that already works for you, if you already wake up every morning and drink coffee and sit outside in your backyard, amazing. You have a routine of some sort. It's easiest to build habits based off of routines that already exist. So you're going to wake up at the same time. You're still going to drink coffee at the same time, but maybe for 5 minutes you'll stretch, and maybe you'll just stretch while drinking coffee, right? So like, if there are things that you do want to implement, adding them into routines that already exist for you. And that can be another way to reduce anxiety as well.
Similarly, right? I love routine. I can't tell you, I'm a huge, oh my God. Like I function best when there's a routine. And so then again, kind of like I was saying earlier, then when I'm out of that routine, then that's when it exposes what's there for me. It's like, right, how do I respond to that? Right.
Exactly.
And so again, it's just kind of like knowing ourselves. And if, say, for example, there is a period where it's like you can't have that routine and feeling a little bit more on edge, just naming it. I'm feeling on edge because I'm out of my routine, and being able to like kind of get to that place and just name it and own it. Like you said, just own it, right? This is where we're at.
This is where we're at. And also, if you were doing that every single day, 5 days a week, and you can't right now, can you even do it once a week? If you were doing it for 30 minutes, can you do it for 5 minutes? How do we give you some resemblance of this thing that brought you comfort?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just like, part of the routine that's been broken up for me is the working out routine, right? With the move and everything. But I have a set of little dumbbells, right? So what I do, even 5 minutes, I even just did 5 minutes, Sohavani, and I was like, yeah. And then I congratulated myself. Congrats, you did 5 minutes. Awesome, right? Exactly. Nothing like I would do before, right? Nowhere near, but still it was something.
It was still something. And tell me, how did you feel once you finished?
Yeah, I felt great. I was like, man, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah. Did you feel more regulated?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. It's part of the comfort, but also exercise does that for us too, right? So just being able to incorporate any part of it, just 5 minutes, even one arm exercise. Maybe you were like, I don't know, you're like holding a box and doing one arm exercise. Great, right? Like whatever you can do is fantastic.
Yeah, and allowing ourselves that, right? Like you said, kind of getting away from the perfectionism tendencies, or the way we think that things should look again, right? Shitting on ourselves, right? And just, like you said, being open to other ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Being open to meeting yourself where you're at and being creative about it. I think actually that's a great place to segue into the ways that boredom, novelty, and hyperfocus play into ADHD. So for people with this diagnosis, boring or repetitive tasks give a very small dopamine reward when they're finished. It's not really enough to keep moving along. But for other people, boring and repetitive tasks gives enough dopamine where they can keep going. And so we're going to have difficulty with things like filling out paperwork, with doing laundry, responding to emails. It can almost feel unbearable. And I think that's the part that really gets missed out about, is like, doing a repetitive task can feel like pushing a car uphill without gas, where it's like, me personally, I feel it in my arms. When I'm about to do something repetitive, I feel like my arms want to pull away from the activity that it is.
So you actually have a somatic response to it.
I do. Yeah. And so, figuring out, right, like that's when I put on the TV. That's when I put on like an audiobook, like we discussed, to make that boring repetitive task a little bit easier. But for everyone, that somatic response is going to feel a little different. And I think I want people's loved ones to understand that it's not laziness, that it actually does feel almost unbearable to do a task that makes your body respond like that.
Yeah, and that's where the like a mind-body awareness can come into play too, right? When you think about interventions, right? Kind of having practicing mindfulness around, oh, I didn't realize that that's what I did, right? Again,
Yeah.
it may be instinctively that's what they're doing in order to respond to the situation, right?
Mhm.
That automatically that's where they go. But then to be able to have that kind of mind-body connection to know when it is happening. It's like,
Yes.
this is what's okay now, right? Being able to identify it, because then we can learn how to work with it once we've identified it. Whereas if we haven't identified it, then it's like we're working against it.
Yeah. You keep trying to push the car uphill and you can only push so far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And at some point it's going to come back and roll back over you and you're never going to want to touch that task again. So really giving yourself the breathing room of being like, oh, I really didn't want to do this. And whatever tool you have, right? Like if I really didn't want to do it, then I could probably turn on TV and maybe not have it work for me. But I can walk away, go do something else, and then remember that I have to turn on the TV first and then do this task. And so just like giving yourself the opportunity to walk away for a bit and coming back to it, like being able to be flexible with where you're at. From there, we'll move on to novelty. Our brains are so wired to respond so strongly to new and interesting and urgent things. They're like novelty in starting a new hobby. I don't know about you, but how many times have you started something that looks super fun and interesting, bought all the things, done it for like a few days, and then been like, oh, never mind. Planning a trip, racing a deadline at the last minute, right? Like dopamine levels spike when things feel novel to us. And then motivation comes rushing in. And so oftentimes we hear people with this diagnosis saying that they're thriving in crisis or feel really alive when something new is happening or when a lot is happening. And that's all because things just keep staying novel. Things are changing. Things are like, crisis means that you're experiencing a whole new thing that maybe you didn't, right? And so your dopamine has spiked and now you can do it. You're like in it.
How much of that dopamine spike and these novelty experiences, I probably keep going back to everybody's different, but what I was thinking was, I wonder how much of that gives a sense of purpose
Mm-hmm.
and direction.
Direction for sure, right? Like that dopamine spikes, you suddenly know what you find interesting and what you want to do outside of watching TV. Sense of purpose, I'm not so sure about because I think then it identifies with your personality, right? Like what is a job that can feel novel enough for you that also aligns? For me, that's therapy. I find people fascinating. Someone new comes in every hour. That's novel to me. It's a new story every hour, right? It only lasts a certain amount of time, so I can't get bored. So that's where that like purpose and novelty align for me. But for every person, it's a little different. And then there's hyperfocus. Hyperfocus happens when we lock onto something that's rewarding enough to trigger dopamine. It can be a project, a video game, a creative idea. I would have a client who would do deep dives on animals, like late at night. Like this was her thing. She would like, the praying mantis was one night. And then like 4 nights later, she'd be like, I got really interested in lobsters, right? And like that, she would get hyper-focused and do that. Hyper-focus on things that feel productive but aren't actually aligned with your goals is a distraction and avoidance technique that can happen where going towards your goal brings up different emotions, or maybe it feels too big and you can't touch it right now. And so instead you find hyper focus and you deep dive into something that doesn't really matter but still feels like you're learning or you're doing something productive in that way. So this can lead to bursts of productivity and creativity, but it can also mean losing track of time, forgetting meals, neglecting other responsibilities.
That one seems like that would be very hard to identify.
Yeah, I think this is also the one that I hear the most, which is like, I can't have this diagnosis because I hyperfocus. I finished the whole Harry Potter game in 2 days. Like, look at how much I can focus. And I'm like, oop, 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 let's back up. What did you forget to do while you were playing that game? You know?
All about context.
All about context.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they aren't random quirks. They're all connected to your ADHD brain. What tasks are harder to start, and then how novelty boosts things, right? Boost certain activities for you, why you get stuck doing something for a week, but then can't pick it up, why you probably, if you're super into music, you might own a guitar and a piano, and you might have started music classes, and then they all left untouched and dusty, right? Those all have to do with how your brain works, which is kind of why it looks like inconsistency from the outside. And even from the inside, you might be judging yourself for being inconsistent. And so the way that you navigate life has to be different from how other people navigate life. And you have to really meet yourself where you're at. I know that we keep saying that, but it's really about, it's okay if you haven't touched that guitar for 3 months, but maybe you're playing the piano right now. And then when you get bored of the piano, you can go back to it, right? Like, it's okay to have these ups and downs with different things that you find interesting.
Boy, I tell you, that's really where having like a therapist or someone in your corner to be able to understand you, right? And be patient with you and just know that, right? Like, that's where that really kind of comes into play here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Having a therapist who's building you up, who's helping you find coping tools, but constantly reminding you of the things that you're doing right, about, like, even when you don't think you are, right? Like, really helping you identify, like, it's okay. Like, you're doing enough, and your enough looks differently from other people, but you're still doing enough.
Yeah. And that's probably a message that they can't get enough of, right? Like, sometimes in order to challenge those core beliefs of, say, for example, there is a core belief of I'm not enough, right? How long has that core belief been around, right? It's not just going to take just one time, someone telling you you're enough to kind of reverse that. It's like you said, it can be take a few reps, right? Or take some consistent, right? Kind of ongoing consistency to kind of remind ourselves too, or even build up that trust in those experience, right? To kind of go against that.
Yeah. It's that constant conversation with someone who believes in you, someone who can remind you to believe in yourself, a check-in every week where, and I'm not saying that therapists are just going to be like praising you all the time. We're also in your corner to point out things that maybe you could have done differently, help you reach those goals with more tough love, right? But always tough love from a strengths-based position of, I saw that you did this last week in this way. I hear that you're being mean to yourself right now, but I want to remind you of that win that happened. How do we use that win to help you get to the next win? Things like that. Should we move on to misconceptions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. The very first one we've written down is laziness, right? We've talked about this already, but we're ADHD, ADD, highly motivated, not a motivation issue. It's just a follow-through issue. And it has to do with tricking your brain, how to help it get the most amount of dopamine that it can get, just really working with yourself. So you're not lazy. You just have to figure out how to get the thing done, even though you don't want to. And you really just don't want to. It's different from other people's brains. This is an adult-only podcast, but one of the misconceptions, not adult-only, anyone can listen to this, but one of the misconceptions is that people grow out of having ADD or ADHD, that it only happens in kids. And this one is always a little sad. So only about 9% of the population grows out of ADD or ADHD symptoms. And when an adult gets tested for ADD or ADHD, they get asked questions from before the age of 12. So a lot of the questions are looking at, what were you like in elementary school? And that is to help the psychologist or psychiatrist or the RN to get an understanding of how long you've been experiencing this. So there's an international assessment called DIVA that I really love. It is so thorough. It includes a question. So a question will be like, and I'm reading right now from it, do you often fail to give close attention to detail? Do you make careless mistakes in your work or during other activities? And how was this during your childhood? So on the left-hand side of this assessment is examples during adulthood. I think these examples are always super helpful because people kind of, when you're being asked this question, it can kind of get hard to think of things. So the examples during adulthood, like work slowly to avoid mistakes. I don't always read instructions carefully. Difficulty working in a detailed way, or I spend too much time when I'm working on detailed tasks, right? Things like that. And then examples during childhood is like, mistakes were made by not reading questions properly. I left questions unanswered. I sometimes left the back of a test unanswered. I never checked my homework. Like when I did math homework, I didn't go back and check my answers, right? So ways that these questions and these examples really make it concrete in how ADHD could be affecting you. And it shows that it's not just kids, it affects you in your adulthood as well.
Yeah, that one about works slowly to avoid mistakes. I'm finding that one more, as I mentioned, kind of like in this, chaos around me, right? From the move and everything. It's like, okay, even last night packing my bag, like I said, coming to my mother-in-law's, it's like, okay, I have to make sure, let me focus now. And then to make sure I get this, right? I just need to stay focused. I'll make sure I get this, right? Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the DIVA test specifically, and it's made, it's not a US based assessment. It's, I think it's made in England, but it's a Europe based assessment. And I really love this DIVA test. You can find it online just by Googling DIVA 2.0. And it's because it includes things like difficulty working in a detailed way or too much time needed to complete detailed tasks, right? Because if you just ask, do you have a hard time with attention to detail? You're going to be like, no, I worked on that essay for 6 hours looking at all the commas, right? And then you're like, wait, it's right there. Like I did work too slowly to find all the issues with the commas. And so it gives a more robust understanding of the diagnosis.
Yeah, again, kind of coming from this place of curiosity just to understand, right? And slowing things down to, right, enhance our own understanding of ourselves.
Yes, exactly. And I wonder if for you, did you understand that you moved really slowly during times where things were chaotic? And that
I didn't realize that before. This is like the first time at almost 52 years of age that I've had this realization. Yeah.
Right. And that's you're in this profession, you know about this diagnosis, and still things like that can get overlooked because I don't think a lot of us understand fully what ADD and ADHD looks like on a day-to-day, especially for adults.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm really glad we're kind of going through this, right? Information to say, hey, there are some other ways to kind of think about how this might be showing up for us.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's a little ADD, ADHD. That's a big one. Yes, a lot of people procrastinate. We all lose track of time at some point, but it's more about how often has this been happening? Does it happen in multiple areas of your life? And does it happen consistently? And that's really what this diagnosis is about. It's not just, do you procrastinate on your math homework, right? It's so much more than that.
Yeah. And when I was having, a conversation with someone, it was the, not brushing the teeth, literally, and forgetting something at school. And I was like, oh, right. And the parent was a little frustrated. You forgot again. Now I have to go back. Right. And I was like, oh, how often does that happen?
Yeah.
And what are you like in a restaurant when you go out in the public, right? Like what happens when you're, up there? And so it's just kind of again, just asking questions and finding out more information. And it's like, yeah, I suggested the referral for them to go get evaluated because it seems like this is popping up, like you said, multiple areas of their life, and it was happening more frequently.
Yeah. How cool is that? That now we actually clinicians have the tools to be able to do that, to look at even things like leaving a book behind, right? And being able to be have that trigger go off of oh, I need to look at other context and not just this one.
And like you said, most of this is kind of like how things manifest or, in adulthood. But even for the kiddos too, right? They might be thinking of, oh, yeah, or especially because the parents getting, mad at them too, right? It's like, oh, no, now I'm in trouble, right? So then there comes this added thing of, well, I have to try to make sure extra pay attention, right? So that I don't get to do the things, so I don't get in trouble, or now I'm a bad person, right? Because, oh, I did it again, right? What's wrong with me? Yeah. So all of these thoughts that can creep into our head when we're younger can still have carry over into adulthood.
Yes, 100%, right? If you think about, for our parents' generation, schools didn't fully understand this diagnosis, right? So if there was a kid in class who wasn't paying attention, and even if they're being more hyperactive around it, it might just be this kid is bad at school. This kid doesn't like to learn, right? And then that can stick with you into adulthood, this idea of I'm bad at school, I'm bad at studies, right? And that's not actually true. Like, I'm sure there's something that you love learning, but because that was instilled in you at a young age, you might stay away from things that require you to learn later on in life, which is sad.
Yeah, and so part of therapy, right, might be helping us to discover what are these kind of core beliefs about
Mhm.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And then having someone challenge us, hey, is that really true, right? But then again, not being able to identify it, right? We're not in a position to be able to work with it. It will run our lives, right?
Yeah.
Instead of us being a little bit more, I hate to say in control, but you know what, you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
Let's have more influence over our own outcomes versus
Yeah.
our fears or maladaptive core beliefs.
Right. Something that we talk about is circumference of control, right? What is it in that circle around you that you can control so that, and what is it everything outside of that circle that you can't control? Now, if you have ADD and ADHD and everything feels like it's out of control, right? Like your own actions feel like out of control, of course you're going to have anxiety. So if we can help you build that circle and find the things that you can control through awareness, through other things, then you're going to feel a little bit less anxious. You're going to feel like you have a little bit more control in this life, that even when the things outside of your control circle happen, you know what you can lean on in order to get through it.
Yeah, and that might even help, over time kind of work towards that own sense of agency and developing that sense of trust that we were talking about too.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so like we've talked about, you and I can't diagnose this. We can work with it. We can look at symptoms. We can red flag it, right? We can write a letter to give to a registered nurse practitioner, to a psychologist, to a psychiatrist, but we can't diagnose this. So they have to go to, if this is something that you're struggling with, right? You have to go to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or an NPC in order to get this diagnosed. If you don't want the diagnosis, but you just want to work through symptoms, your therapist can do that with you. You don't have to go get that diagnosis. But if you want medication, then that diagnosis is important. When we talk about treatments, right, medication is one, lifestyle changes is one, and then therapy is another one. If we're just talking about lifestyle changes, I know that people get really mad at me when I say this, because I think most of us have been struggling with this anyway, which is regular exercise. Regular exercise is a huge part of managing ADD and ADHD. Outside of medication, this is the second most effective tool. It doesn't work as well as medication, but it is the second most effective tool at people's disposal. When you work out, it boosts dopamine and
norepinephrine.
Norepinephrine. I don't know why my brain just blinks on that word.
Right, something with the tongue, right? I think this is the way it rolls off the tongue.
It's just not working. Yeah. So exercise increases those chemicals, which means that there's more of it in your brain. And so it improves attention and focus and motivation, especially in the short term. So if you can do it every single day, that's something that you have access to. It improves your executive functioning. It regulates your mood, so you're less likely to have those big emotion dysregulation moments. And it also burns off restlessness, especially if you have ADHD, right? When we have kids with ADHD, we often tell people to put them into sports, like get them into something so that they burn off that energy.
Earlier, we were talking about like instinctively people will go to these places to express, right? And kind of let their symptoms. I have a kiddo client, they love to dance. I was like, yes, that's perfect, right? You're already instinctively like doing what you need to do to kind of express that.
Exactly. I had one mom who, because I mostly work with adults, her kid had ADHD and she made him run to school in the morning because that was just enough exercise to help him get through until PE or like into lunch.
And did he actually like it? Like,
yeah, he
right?
did.
And he liked it, right? Exactly.
He liked it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So just like, once again, getting creative, right? Like, how do you get that exercise in a way that feels good for you? Dancing is wonderful. Walking, hiking, right? Wherever you can fit it in. It does not have to be that you go to the gym every day. It can, getting a walking pad and walking while you're watching TV, right? Like anything that you can do is huge. And then the other part of this, right, is therapy coaching and psychoeducation. I think you and I throughout the session have been talking about the ways that therapy can be effective, right? Helping you find compassion for yourself, meeting yourself where you're at, looking at all the ways that this might be affecting you, being able to be strengths-based, helping you see your wins. All of that is so great for a therapist to be able to work with you to figure out. And then medication. I think medications with ADD and ADHD are super effective. Stimulants, as well as the non-stimulants, they're really impactful. They are not a quick fix, right? Like, it's not like you take this medication and suddenly you're like, I want to be at the gym at 6 a.m. No, but when you do want to be at the gym, there won't be 17 different obstacles in your brain to get you there. Like, you're still going to have to go to the gym, and it probably will not be at 6 a.m. if you're not a morning person, but you're not going to have to fight yourself all day to make it happen. So it's really cool that stimulants work like this, that they increase your dopamine, and that about 70 to 80% of kids and adults with ADD and ADHD find it effective. For people struggling with health, it can really impact your binge eating because it helps your impulse control. So it's been shown to reduce having medication has been shown to reduce like type 2 diabetes, right? Weight loss, things like that. As long as you're doing it carefully, you're talking to your nutritionist, right? The combination of those things can be really effective in getting your health.
I think that's important because sometimes, and rightfully so, right? People have they can make the decision if they want to take medication themselves or not, right? But sometimes having this additional information, right, around taking medication, it's not just about taking medication, right, for ADD or ADHD, right? It's about, oh, look, it actually has these other effects as well.
Exactly. It can impact almost every aspect of your life, right? Like, it can impact spending because you're no longer impulse spending. It can impact like your health, like we've discussed, right? It can impact relationships because you're able to do more tasks around the house. Your executive functioning and prioritization is a little bit better. It can impact work because it might not take you as long to get through the minute details. It can help all aspects of your life. And I'm not normally someone who advocates for medication, but I do think if you have severe symptoms, not being medicated you're just taking a much harder route to get there. You can get there. I really think that you still can, but it is a much harder route to get there. And then the thing that people often get afraid is that stimulants can be addictive. And it's true. Stimulants are addictive. It's like a class 1 drug or something, right? So there are non-stimulant drugs that work for this diagnosis as well. And so the stimulants also affect heart rate. So if you have any like heart disease or anything like that, doctors are not going to give you a stimulant. They will give you a non-stimulant, and they work differently, but they still help calm down overactive brain circuits. And they're less potent, but they're going to help you regulate. They're going to help you with sleep problems. They're going to help you, especially when you have ADHD combined with anxiety. It's a great way to be able to calm both of those down at the same time. And it's going to help in the same ways that the stimulant helped, just probably a little bit less effective.
October is ADHD Awareness Month. In honor of this, we have been releasing an episode each Wednesday of the month that focuses on different aspects of this mental health condition. Join us next week for our 5th and final episode in this series as we discuss coping skills, accommodations for school and work, and wrap up the series with some highlights and insights.